Operation Domination is underway. Operation Domination is underway. The ultimate game plan to dominate your NFL experience. With your hosts, Dan
You gotta be confident about your Achilles when you show up.
Yeah, I mean, I got him at
Chris Dowhouse,
Hearing about these are pointless in fantasy in this sense.
and Adam LaRue. Don't hope to win. Be great and dominate.
Well, hello, and welcome back to Operation Domination here on our beautiful time of 9:30 on Wednesday nights on the Fantasy Football Advice Network on YouTube. Make sure you go check it out, subscribe, hit the bell notification if you haven't done so already, so you get notified whenever we have new content available too. We literally have live shows every day, videos dropping in the morning, not this show, our show, and all the other great shows, part of the Fantasy Football Advice Network. So make sure you go ahead and check us out. If you want to dive into just us, you can, subscribe to the playlist there on YouTube, or check us out on your favorite podcast app. We're available wherever you listen to podcasts. So make sure you find Operation Domination Football, because boys, we are 2 weeks away from actual talking about a preview of week 1. It's this show, next week's show, and then I'm pretty sure if I'm doing the math correctly in my head, it's a week 1 preview after that. And we'll have a big wide variety of topics that we're going to be covering. The show is going to be much different. If you were with us in the past with the MD's Fantasy Football Show, we're going to be changing things up. It's going to be looking way different. We're going to hit you with way more, variety of topics and angles and stuff, because we want you to operate and dominate. All right, so this is what we got going on. It's me, your host, Dan Mater. I got Chase Thornton in the building. I got Chris Dowhower in the building. I got Adam LaRue in the building. We don't have a guest for the show because it's time to get down to the nitty gritty. All right. It's draft time. This weekend, next weekend, it's going to be the 2 most popular draft weekends for home leagues, redraft leagues, FFPC, or whatever. So what we want to do is we want to tackle our tiers and show your groupings and actually get into a draft strategy. Not so much in a mock draft, but kind of walk through, all right, what would an ideal draft using our tiers collectively be able to look like? So that's what we're going to go through in today's show. So I don't want to take up any more time. Let's dive into it right off the rip. We don't have too much breaking news this week. There's some injuries, but it sounds like, there was nobody who's going to miss time that's anything new, basically. So we can go.
Yeah, Bo Nix is a starter. I mean,
Bo Nix is a starter. I think we
knew. Breaking news. It's breaking news.
I think we knew that when he got drafted. Did anybody really believe it was going to be Zach Wilson or Jarrett Stidham?
Hey, Zach Wilson has acquitted himself well in camp, according to all accounts. But yeah, no, this was Bo Nix's job from the time they made the phone call on draft night. Yeah.
If you're going to draft Bo Nix that early in the first round, you better.
He's
not someone just like, oh, we're untapping some potential here. Like,
no, you've bought in, and you got to follow that up.
He's already 50 years old with 10 years of experience in college. Yeah, he better play right away. All right, so first up, we have our first round picks. So for this draft setup, what we wanted to do, we wanted to create it so we're picking towards the back end of the first round. Because I feel like everybody, you get in the first end of the first round, you kind of know what your players are kind of looking for anyway. So I wanted to go to the back end of the first round. So imagine a range of picks 7 through 9 in the first round, and we're going to snake draft this thing. Our plan is to get through 9 rounds in this episode. If you have any questions, make sure you shout them out, especially if you're watching there on the YouTube, because we'll try to get to them as we go along. So this is how it's going to work. All right, we're going to have 2 of our hosts going to talk about, their player nominee that's from their tier range around these picks. I'm going to talk a little bit about what the ADP looks like in that, and then one of us is going to pick which of the 2 picks from the other 2 hosts that we want to do. So first up in the first round, Chase is going to pick between Adam's nominee and Chris's nominee, which is the same nominee. So good job, guys, by you on that first round there.
Make it tough. Make it tough on me. Here we go.
Yeah, really. So let me just give the ADP real quick. In the ADP range of the first round through 7 through 9, right now, as it stands, guys like Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Amon-Ra St. Brown, A.J. Brown, Jonathan Taylor, Saquon Barkley, Garrett Wilson. Those are the guys typically going around that range. So, Adam, I'm going to go to you first. Talk about why Justin Jefferson's your nominee of your group.
Look, I'm gonna be honest. If we don't get guys like CeeDee Lamb and Jamar Chase into like these buildings soon, Justin Jefferson's going to outright pass them for me. I'm not, worrying about the guys that aren't with their teams. So for me, he's very near becoming that wide receiver 2 behind Tyreek Hill. I think that getting him at 7, 8, 9 is incredible value. He's been,
Well, guys are just kicking us off the show. I mean, really, what's going on here? Like the fantasy gods are just like, the hell with all of you, and we're just gonna kick you all out. Adam, continue with your thought there.
They did not like that take, but
apparently,
he's one of the
Jamar
most
Chase will be in the building. Damn it!
He's one of the most dominant starts to his career that we've ever seen. We saw him last year coming off of injury with quarterbacks who look. I don't like Sam Darnold. Never have. Didn't like him coming out of college. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that he's an upgrade over Nick Mullins. Maybe that's crazy for me to say. I think Sam Darnold is better than Nick Mullins. And Justin Jefferson looked pretty damn good with Nick Mullins throwing him the ball. So, look, I'm pretty confident in the guy. I would feel comfortable taking him a little bit higher than this. So to get him at 7, 8, 9, I'm extremely happy.
Yeah, Chris, anything you want to add to that? Because your nominee was also Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, I mean, this is number 2 player on my board. As Adam kind of alluded to, I'm not afraid of no ghosts. I mean, Sam Darnold could be the quarterback. He might be afraid of ghosts, but he can throw the ball. Justin Jefferson, a guy who showed you could be a stud, a receiver 5. When he returned back from injury last week with this Nick Mullins, with Darrell Hall, with different quarterbacks, Dobbs, they're throwing out there in a situation. Well, Darnold's better than any of those guys. Still remains to be seen in some of that aspects, Adam. But we saw all those guys feature him enough that he was still receiver 5, playing back fresh off an injury. So the whole offseason, he's been, kind of managing his body, making sure he's going to stay healthy for the whole season. Got paid. So this is a guy who I think is going to be a target monster, a guy who is also effective down the field. One of those guys who isn't just a slot guy who's going to get 6, 7 yards on the field. This guy's going down 20, 25 yards, big play machine. So I love Justin Jefferson. And when I saw that he was one of the guys we could have here, I ran up to the podium and I would definitely take that guy, Chase.
All right, so Chase, here I'm going to throw you a little loop here because obviously there's no choice between the nominees because it's Justin Jefferson from both these guys. So let's go to the ADP range. Again, it's Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Amon-Ra St. Brown, A.J. Brown, Jonathan Taylor, Saquon Barkley, Garrett Wilson. Those are the guys typically available in the 7 through 9 range in that first round. Is there anybody not named Justin Jefferson that you would rather have over Justin Jefferson, or is Jefferson just the pick for you?
Out of the names that are here and that are available, no. If Jefferson or Chase, either one of them actually does fall this far, which I haven't seen a ton in most of the drafts that I've been doing, they haven't necessarily fallen that far. But if either one of them is on the board, yeah. Right now, I actually have Jefferson ranked as my wide receiver 3. I have Chase ranked as my wide receiver 4, and they are the last 2 in my elite wide receiver tier for this round. And so if I saw either one of them, yeah, I probably couldn't click draft fast enough. Justin Jefferson, I mean, we've said it. If you look at his stats last year, I know everybody says, oh, he was even good with the revolving door of mediocrity that they had at quarterback the last half of the year. He was much more consistent when he had competent quarterback play. Sam Darnold is at the very least going to be competent quarterback play. He should be much better than what they saw the last half of last year. Jefferson is almost a lock for over 20 points a game at the wide receiver position, which means he's a lock for a top 4 wide receiver finish. I couldn't be happier than to make this pick if this was actually the choice presented to me, Jefferson or Jefferson. So,
yeah, and go just backtrack real quick. Adam's point. It with Lamb and Chase not necessarily getting into camp, I've decided, I'm going to update my rankings a little bit. I have now moved Tyreek Hill as my number 1 wide receiver overall. Jefferson has become my number 2 receiver overall. As a result to that, yes, by halfway through the season, everything may be fine with CeeDee Lamb and Jamar Chase, but it does matter when you're a wide receiver, when you haven't had time to ramp up, and we haven't heard anything about this getting close to being done like at any time soon. So we don't even know if they'll get 2 weeks, a weekend before, week 1's already here because we're at the end of August already. So I'm
probably giving another week before I'm over worried, just because the offensive situation hasn't necessarily changed for either Lamb or Chase. They're still going to be the alphas in their offense with good quarterback play. and they don't necessarily need a ton of time to like learn how to play with their quarterbacks or anything. But if we go another week or so, if we go another 5 days a week or so, and we haven't seen any movement, then yeah, I'm definitely all for making some adjustments to the rankings, because then you're talking about not just necessarily the connection with the quarterback, but you're talking about game shape and physical shape, and then we're in problems.
Two players, Dan, to your point, Dan, two players have soft tissue injuries in their past too, as guys who've been nicked up here and there as well. So it is something to kind of be concerned about.
No, and again, we're nitpicking because of the top elite tier too. And then when it comes to nitpicking, that's why I kind of move those around. James Thompson has a question for you, Chase. How do you feel about 0 RB, and what round are you starting to grab running backs?
All right, Cap. Here's my take on it. Normally, and I know why he's asking this, I'm not normally into the 0 RB approach. I normally like a hero, or what they call anchor RB approach. Yeah, neither one of us has actually picked. We're picking in the same jersey league right now for FFAN, and neither one of us, we're in the 5th round right now, and neither one of us has anything except wide receivers right now. But it's a wide receiver heavy league that we've set up over there, with a lot of escalators for receiving points. So you have to take it as it comes and see what falls to you and how the board falls. And right now I've felt much more comfortable taking the receivers that are there. Normally I like to go with that anchor approach, that hero or anchor running back approach. So I generally come out of the first 2 rounds with one. But as I said, special circumstance, there is value to be had later on. It means that you're taking some risks and some shots, but in a wide receiver heavy league with 3 starting wide receivers have to be the priority in your build. And so I've made it a priority in that build.
Speaking of the Jersey Leagues, in case you guys are listening for the first time, don't know what they are, what we got going on in Fantasy Sports Advice Network right now. If you become a pro member, which is either $50 for the year or $5 a month, you get full access to the Fantasy Sports Advice platform, both the app and the website. Constant 24 around the clock fantasy football advice available to you at all times, with a bunch of people who want to hang out, talk fantasy sports, get all the great content. And you also get to join then a Jersey League for free. And if you look at the comments, I have the direct link to my Brandon Ayuk jersey, which only has 3 spots left. And then we're going to start drafting soon. So make sure you guys sign up, become pro members, and look for the Brandon Ayuk League in the league classifieds. All right, so let's go ahead and get into the second round now, which would be picks 4 through 6. Remember, we're going through a snake draft setup here. So Chase and I are both going to give our nominees, and Adam's going to pick between the two. Now, right now, if you go in that second round, 4 through 6, the ADP range is looking like roughly Kyren Williams, Marvin Harrison, Travis Etienne, Davante Adams, and Derrick Henry. Now, we're going to go off our own tier group of guys, but those ADP-wise is roughly what it's looking like. So, Chase, why don't you go ahead, talk about your nominee for this tier?
I'm going to nominate Travis Etienne. I just talked about how I like to come out of those first 2 rounds with a wide receiver and a running back generally, because I like that anchor running back. Now, in my rankings, I actually have Etienne and Barkley ranked back-to-back at running back 6 and running back 7. I have Etienne at running back 6. So he's the one that I'm going to choose here. Like I said, assuming we took the wide receiver in round 1, which we did, coming back with that running back, the second round running back is the end of my anchor range there in terms of running back strategies. And so I like to at least have one after that time. And Etienne, he was top 10 overall last year, top 10 overall and points per game. He's in line for massive volume. Again, I am not scared about any other running back on that team taking literally any touches from him. If anything, of any of the teams in football, they may consider giving him more just because of the dearth of talent they actually do have behind him on the roster. He's going to be a target and volume hog this year at the running back position again for them. So I like Etienne.
Okay. Can't argue with that too strongly. My nominee from my group is going to be Chris Olave. I was back and forth on this because I recently just moved Kyren Williams up a little bit in my ranking. So I kind of have Kyren Williams, Chris Olave, both neck and neck in this grouping of tier that I have going on right now. But ultimately I decided I had to go Chris Olave because with Kyren Williams, I'm still worried about at some point Blake Corum being a problem. I have no concerns about Chris Olave and what his role is going to be within this offense. Now, preseason hasn't looked the prettiest. Derek Carr still hasn't looked like he's quite in sync yet, but it's still preseason. I'm not going to read too much into it. What I have seen out of the ones is that offense clearly runs through Chris Olave. And then everybody else is frankly second. So with that, with a better coaching staff, I've been preaching this all year long, that I expect him to be more efficient on the connections with Derek Carr and in the play calling in particular. I mean, let's keep in mind here, Carr will let it fly. He was 4th in deep targets last year. Chris Olave was 3rd in unrealized air yards. The problem was he was 72nd in ranked target accuracy. That's the part that's got to get better, but that's where I think the play calling of Kubiak is going to help out with more throws in that 10 to 19 yard range on the middle of the field, which I think is more beneficial for a guy like Derek Carr, especially off of play action, to help him get more accurate in that instance. It's not about Olave getting open, right? He excels in route running. He was 13th in route runs last year, 27th in route win rate, had 1.71 yards target separation. He's going to get open. If Derek Carr just gets into rhythm within this offensive system, with Derek Carr being more accurate of the middle of the field, I think we're going to see a big year out of Chris Olave this year. He breaks out and big on him all year. So my nominee here in the second round would be Chris Olave. All right, Adam, so you decide between the two nominees which one you want to go here. Keep in mind, we have Justin Jefferson in the first round.
Yeah, and with that, and that does help make my decision a little bit easier. I am going to go with Travis Etienne. I do really like Chris Olave. I think he is ready to take another step forward. But ultimately, I'm scared about the Saints because it's a stagnant team as a whole. You know, a lot of those pieces are returning pieces. Now, they've only been there for a year, and they had a short off season, and I do think that they're going to move forward. But it's still just a little bit rich for me still. Back end of the second, and I do really like Olave. But for me, I am high on ETN going into this year. He's been someone that's moving up. Dan, had you gone Kyren, I might have sided with you, but for now, I am going Chase.
Yes. It's a close one. It's a close one. All right. So now it's time for the third round to talk about. So the third round, we're back, third round, 7 through 9 picks. So in the back end of the third round, this is what we're targeting. And this is where I'm going to be picking between the nominees, between Chris and Chase's nominees here. In the ADP range of this round, we're roughly looking at Deebo Samuel, Nico Collins, Mike Evans, Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, Brandon Ayuk, Rashad White, Jaylen Waddle, Cooper Kupp. Those are some names that we've seen consistently within that range. Some of them have moved up a little bit as of recent, so we'll get into that a bit here. Chris, talk about your nominee.
Yeah, so I think you're sitting in round 3. You've got a lot of different good choices. You talked about the ADP players that we have available. There's different guys that I like, but the guy I like the most is Cooper Kupp, guy who I've been on his entire offseason, who's healthy this offseason, the guy who's been a stud receiver for back-to-back years, had a down year last year. We're concerned about his injuries, concerned about Puka Nacua. How's he going to transition to this offense? I have no concerns about that at all. I look at a guy who's been, been Matthew Stafford's best friend basically in the passing attack, especially in the red zone. We saw Puka Nacua only has 7 touchdowns. Cooper Kupp averaged, 10 touchdowns, 12 touchdowns, for back-to-back seasons. Last year still had 6, tied only one behind Puka, and played only 5 or 6 games the whole season. So a guy who I look forward to being healthy, like I said, a guy who I'm looking forward to returning to greatness, and a guy who is a receiver too, could easily win this league.
Okay. I like it. Chase, who's your nominee to combat that in this late third round?
No, that's a good pick. It's a good pick. I like Cooper Kupp. I have him as my wide receiver 13, but I have Mike Evans as my wide receiver 10. I have Mike Evans going in the middle of the second round, Kupp going late second round. So if either one of them was on the board, I'd jump at the chance. So I'm going to nominate Mike Evans. If he's all here, you have to be all over that. Listen, Kupp and Deebo are also ranked higher for me. They're good choices, but Evans, he's so steady. He's a lock for 1,000 yards. He's a lock for over 8 touchdowns. He's Mayfield's favorite target there. Last year, he thrived in that system. Now I know that they've got Liam Cohen coming in, but remember, Baker played pretty well with Liam Cohen, helping him out in Los Angeles a couple of years ago. I don't expect that anything's going to change in terms of the Mayfield-Evans connection. He's got a nice consistency floor. You're drafting him as a wide receiver too, but we know he's got wide receiver 1 upside. And if he's going to just continue to catch everything of value from Mike Evans or from Baker Mayfield, I'm okay with that. So honestly, you can't go wrong here, but my nominee between the two would be Mike Evans based on my rankings and my tiers.
2 very strong options, which makes me really excited about the back end of the third round, by the way, between the 2 of these guys.
Right.
But I am going to select Cooper Kupp. And here's why. Cooper Kupp, talk about shifting my rankings around, is now in my top 12. He was sitting at 14, 13, 12, 11. I have Puka 10 and Cooper Kupp 11. That's where I'm at on the Rams wide receivers right now. So I'm with Chris on the idea that Cooper Kupp, I think we did see a time with Sean McVay and Jared Goff was a quarterback where two receivers, Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp, were both top 12 wide receivers in that season. I do believe Puka Nacua, who is infinitely more talented than Robert Woods, and Cooper Kupp, who's healthy, and if he's healthy, he's dangerous. I think we could see both these guys finish in the top 12 once again. I do not have Mike Evans as a top 12 receiver this year. I kind of talked about this a little bit before. Touchdown regression, less than double-digit touchdowns in particular. I think it's going to come back this season. I think there's going to be some regression without Dave Canales. I think there's going to be regression because Baker Mayfield is simply not as good as what we saw last season.
There it is.
Cooper Kupp has a much higher ceiling to at that. So I'm going with Cooper Kupp. So right now, just to recap, through 3 rounds, we have Justin Jefferson, we have Travis Etienne, and we have Cooper Kupp, just using our collective tiers. I feel like that's a very, very strong start here, guys. So let's see if we can keep it going as we go into the 4th round on the flippity flop, where we get to pick in the higher portion of the 4th round. Now, for this one, Chris is going to pick between the nominees. It's going to be me nominating players and Adam nominating his player. So, Adam, why don't you go ahead and talk about your nominee here for the 4th round?
Jermaine Burton.
Oh, no, it's not Jermaine Burton, but I was going to lead into it. It's another guy who I have spoken about and probably a little bit too much. You're probably tired of hearing me talk about, and it's DJ Moore, a guy who all offseason I've been really big on. When it comes to this range, these guys that we're looking at, there's not many guys who had his points per game from last year. So just starting from that, he had a really great season last year. 14 points per game and half-point PPR where we're drafting is awesome. Now, look, the situation has changed a little bit. Some good, some bad. The weapons around him have gotten better. Keenan Allen's a massive target hog. We know that he's a guy who's going to demand targets, a guy who's going to be, key on the underneath, quarterback's best friend, especially for a young quarterback like Caleb Williams. But circling back to the upgrades, Caleb Williams is a massive upgrade as a passer to someone like Justin Fields. And while you might be a little bit worried with some rookies that they're just going to lock on to that slot receiver, Caleb Williams is a guy that we know is going to want to extend plays, is going to want to push the ball down the field. And while I think, that aspect of his game is maybe a little bit overblown, that, he's trying to do that all the time. I think he is willing to take the check down when he's got a team that can support that. But look, he's going to try to make plays. That's the reality of the situation. And DJ Moore is going to be the playmaker early on in his Bears career. Look, maybe Rome Odunze, who I love, develops into that, and he could even develop into it fairly quickly. But I think that they've put Caleb Williams in a great position to see success as a rookie. And as a result, I think DJ Moore is going to be that guy that's, being their playmaker down the field more often than not.
I can't argue, Adam, because, he got paid, right? Keenan Allen's fat, apparently. They overblown the whole 230-pound thing. Like, he's fat and he's slow. I'm like, he ran a 4.7 and he's playing the slot. Who cares?
He's never been on. Yeah.
It's just funny. But yeah, can't argue with that at all. And I forgot to go over the ADP range. So DJ Moore, very much in the ADP range of what we're talking about here, the 4th round, 4 through 6 picks. Other guys in that range right now are looking like DK Metcalf, Lamar Jackson, Stephon Diggs, Joe Mixon, Alvin Kamara, Kenneth Walker. The one guy I have in here, because his ADP is actually closer to the next round, but I'm a little bit higher on him, so I'm going to nominate him here. We're both nominating wide receivers, by the way. That's DeVonta Smith. So DeVonta Smith is somebody that I feel like always gets overlooked because, he's got A.J. Brown as a teammate, right? And A.J. Brown, we know, is going to be the wide receiver 1. Over the last couple of years, Brown had a 28% target share to Smith's 27 in 2022. And then in 2023, Brown increased the gap to 30% to Smith's 24%, although it wasn't really a great offensive year for the Eagles, especially in the second half of the season anyway. Chris, you and I had this conversation off air that the vibe I'm getting about DeVonta Smith, when you look at all the beat report writers, and and one friend, Dave Zangara of NBC, talked to him quite frequently. The feeling we get is that DeVonta Smith and his sharp route running is about to take another step this year. and that literally nobody can cover him. Now, I don't know if that's because the Eagles secondary is still bad. That could still be the case. But we do think they've upgraded in quite a few places, right? So everything has been, DeVonta Smith looks like he's primed to take another leap this season. And for a guy on an offense with Kellen Moore that should look a hell of a lot better than it did last year, it can't look any worse, especially in the second half of the year. Let's just put it that way. I do think DeVonta Smith can be way higher than what his ADP is, which is wide receiver 22. I think we're drafting him at his floor. And in this instance, if I'm doing the math correctly, he'd be our third receiver, which in a lot of these leagues, that would be lights out. It's either going to be you're either starting three receivers or he's a flex play. And if he has the value to be a top 10 receiver, which by the way, 2022, he was a top 10 wide receiver in points per game. So we've already seen him be able to do it. It's nothing but upside, I think, at where he's being drafted. So for me, I'm giving you DeVonta Smith, who has a little bit of a less target share distribution he has to worry about with DJ Moore. Doesn't have to worry about the rookie quarterback. I think Kellen Moore is a better play caller than Shane Waldron, although you can say the stats are a little bit comparable between the two. But that's why I'm going with DeVonta Smith. So, Chris, DeVonta Smith or DJ Moore as the two nominees. Who would you select here?
Yeah, both excellent nominees. I just want to make sure I understood, Dan. Did you say DK Metcalf was one of the options for this round? Because that would be really hard for me to pass on receiver three.
His ADP is here. So his ADP hits just enough in the fourth round where I needed to include him in the list. He is a little bit hit or miss as far as does he actually make it that far. He's kind of like in that 3-4 turn-ish. So he'd be a little bit higher than necessarily where we'd be picking.
So going back to the guys that you guys are nominating, I love DJ Moore's, what he was able to do last year, being Justin Fields at receiver one. I think there's a lot of things you talked about Adam, him being able to be a guy who can be faceted in his attack, where he can get down the field and also be able to do underneath stuff. So it's not a guy who's just doing one thing. Dan, we talked about, like you said, off the air about DeVonta Smith, how we heard about him excelling in practice, how he's just basically unstoppable. And the thing for me that I'm going to go with DeVonta Smith is that stands out to me is, going back to Kellen Moore and looking at the Cowboy days when Dak Prescott had one of his better years, when he was able to feed three receivers, Michael Gallup, Amari Cooper, and CeeDee Lamb all were able to eat. I think DeVonta Smith is kind of a hybrid position in the sense what CeeDee Lamb was and Michael Gallup was in that offense, where he can kind of do a little bit of both. He could be that guy who could move around, be that slot receiver, but also can be a guy who could stretch the field. AJ is going to be that receiver one, I think, but DeVonta's going to see a lot of, second corners, a guy who's going to be able to get easy, opportunities to get separation. And then, like I said, I think similar to DJ Moore, I think the playbook's going to be there for him to be able to do multiple things. I like the Eagles' offense upside more so I'm going to go with the safer guy who doesn't have necessarily as many mouths to feed, and I'll go with DeVonta Smith.
Okay, so just to recap now, so we got Justin Jefferson, we got Travis Etienne, Cooper Kupp, DeVonta Smith. Okay. I should have probably prefaced this. We are doing this based on half-point PPR scoring, and standard leagues mostly, for the most part, start three receivers, a flex, a tight end, two running backs, and a quarterback. So we'll keep it rolling with that. So now we can go into the fifth round, pick 7 through 9 against the back end of the fifth. Here we come, and we got. I'm losing my place here. We got Chase is going to pick between the two nominees, between Adam and Chris. Okay, so ADP-wise, in the fifth round, the back end of the fifth round, this is kind of what we're looking at. We're talking about guys like Aaron Jones, George Pickens, T. Higgins, James Conner, Ramondre Stevenson. ADP-wise, back in the fifth round, those are the type of names that we're looking at here. Let's see, based off of your guys' tiers, who you want to nominate. Adam, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so this is more of a, last round, I went with a guy who had a monster 2023. This round, I'm going for a guy who I'm projecting a bounce back, and that's with T. Higgins out of Cincinnati. Now, look, we may not want to get the extra receiver here, and that's just something that I didn't know when we were setting this up. But look, T. Higgins would still be an excellent flex option. I think the price has kind of come down to where it's a lot more reasonable this year. Look, he was kind of being drafted as almost as if he was an extra wide receiver one rather than being the wide receiver two of this offense with Chase as the alpha. Now I think he is being correctly identified as a guy, down to that next tier where I think he becomes a value. Now, look, he had a bunch of injury issues last year, and he started off the year incredibly slow outside of his one, I think it was like week 3 or 4, like monster game. But when he came back the last time healthy, he did look a lot more like himself. He had, I think 3 touchdowns over his last 3 or 4 games. it was a big part of that offense. That was with Burrow out still. And Burrow never really looking himself during that same period in which T. Higgins was having issues at the beginning of the season. There was just a lot that went wrong in Cincinnati last year. And I entrust that is, his performance last year was a culmination of all of those things that went wrong rather than a testament to T. Higgins' skill, who I think is still a very, very good receiver, a guy who I think could be an alpha receiver on some teams, or at least, a Michael Pittman-esque, like, hey, I'm that 1A guy. You probably want to pair me, but don't, I'm not a 2. It just happens that he is with a true alpha. So T. Higgins is an incredible talent. I think Burrow is going to be back. And as such, I think this is really good value here, at least, in my drafts, when I'm seeing him in the 5th round, I really like it.
He's got a lot to prove, right? He's got a lot to prove this year.
Contract year.
I know. Contract. Everything's at stake right now. This is his time to get paid. He's got a lot to prove, a lot to do, a lot of reasons to be motivated this season. 100%. All right, Chris. So let's talk about your nominee here in the back end of the 5th round.
Well, so first, I like what Adam was, considering doing there with T. Higgins as that 4th receiver, like he says, a flex option, but also a guy who's a red zone option. Maybe DeVonta Smith doesn't score the touchdowns you're looking for, so you have a guy that maybe you can kind of rotate the 2 of those guys as a nice little receiver 3 option. But I'm going to stick in the backfield, Dan, and I'm going to go with, this is a tough one because I have 3 running backs that you listed, all basically neck and neck. I mean, I could flip a coin and be happy with any of them. I originally had James Conner because I like the upside, like how he ended the season, like the offense adding Marvin Harrison, so we already see them be effective without any passing attack. Imagine if they actually could have somebody you had to honor on the outside. But I changed my mind and I went with Ramondre Stevenson. And Ramondre Stevenson is the guy that's a little rich a little high maybe for me, Dan. But what I'm looking at is the guy who can be a true bell cow back. We've seen this offense with Van Pelt in Cleveland, feed Nick Chubb, a guy that we know is one of the top RB options. So you could have particularly a RB, the guy who can be that feature running back that can just grind it out. But what Ramondre Stevenson also brings to the table, and I know they signed Gibson, but Ramondre Stevenson can catch the ball. So with a Jacoby Brissett, with a Drake May, whoever the quarterback is going to be, I think you're going to see a lot of check down opportunities as well. This offense was checking down the ball a lot last year. I know it's different offensive play calling, but you still see that the offensive line isn't very good. So a lot of times that back becomes your best friend. And then you look at the red zone. Ramondre Stevenson has not scored touchdowns the last couple of years. It's almost craziness in a sense. But the guy's 240 pounds. It's a matter of time until he starts getting selling healthy and being able to be effective in the red zone. I like Aaron Jones a lot. I like James Conner a lot. I think they're guys that have a lot of upside. But I'm going to go with the guy who I think could be a bell cow as our RB2 to balance out the Travis Etienne. Like I said, a guy who's maybe going to be a touchdown guy, another touchdown guy, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, before Chase jumps in there, I want to add something to that. One part of the reason why Ramondre Stevenson hasn't had many touchdowns because that offense has been terrible. They haven't had situations where they could score very often, and I don't know that changes necessarily this year. But what I am going to say to that is, remember, 2022. Ramondre Stevenson was RB14 on a points per game basis, even without necessarily getting all the touchdowns in the world. I'm not worried about Antonio Gibson factoring in a significant way here. They paid Ramondre to be the offense. So, Chris, I wanted to put that out there because Ramondre, I mean, he's near and dear to my heart. I'm like one of the highest rankers on him.
You're the big, you're a big Ramondre dude. Yeah.
I was going to say real quick, Dan, not necessarily the offense is going to be as bad, but I think the offense should be improved, particularly have 2 mobile quarterbacks where second run, Drake May can run. It's going to bring an added element to the passing running attack, I should say, where I think that last 2 years was, Zappy and Matt Jones, there was no element of, keeping guys honest.
All right, Chase. So choose between Adam's nominee of T. Higgins and Chris's nominee of Ramondre Stevenson.
My heart wants to maybe go running back here, but I liked what Adam said about T. Higgins and a bounce back year. We had actually talked earlier about the idea of if Chase and if Lamb can't get their contract situations going. Well, we know Higgins had contract drama, but Higgins is going to be there for them this year. And if anything goes wrong with Jamar Chase, T. Higgins is the alpha over there. I don't mind that kind of depth. I actually have T. Higgins as a 4th round pick, as a mid 4th round pick. We could have taken him with our last pick, and I would have been happy with it. So I'm going to go with T. Higgins here over Ramondre Stevenson. I'm like you said, I'm a little leery of that offense up there in New England in investing pretty much anything in them. If I am going to invest in them, it's probably Ramondre, but I don't have Ramondre ranked quite as high as I would have T. Higgins. I'll I'll gladly take T. Higgins. We're stacking up depth at that wide receiver position.
We sure are. So, yeah, just to recap, we're through 5 rounds now. Picking at the back end of the first round and snake drafting our way through. So we have Justin Jefferson, Travis Etienne, Cooper Kupp, T. Higgins we just took, DeVonta Smith. I'm missing somebody. I feel like I'm missing somebody.
Jefferson in the first, Etienne in the second, Kupp, DeVonta Smith, and now T. Higgins. So we have 4 wide receivers and a running back through 5 rounds.
Not missing anybody. Go ahead,
I'm good with the pick of Higgins. I just want to question real quick, guys. Higgins is a good player, but statistically, he hasn't really been, fantasy awesome for 5 years almost now. I mean, his best year was 1,000 yards, 7 touchdowns, and that was 2022. That was 2 years in a row. That's his back-to-back years. So, I mean, the guy's never scored double-digit touchdowns since 2020, and his high was 7.
Pre-Jamar Chase. Chris, you're kind of preaching to the choir a little bit on this one. So I have T. Higgins ranked as the wide receiver 27. I think I've talked about this on the show earlier in the summer, but I linked him to Mike Williams, a guy who has a lot of promise. People are big on every single year, but usually winds up getting injured, missing a handful of games. And that's been a pretty consistent theme of his. The highest he's ever finished was wide receiver 15 on a points per game basis. And that was back in 2022. That was his best year statistically. He's never surpassed 1,100 yards, never had more than 7 touchdowns in a single season. And I think he's more of a wide receiver 3 as a result of that. So I'm kind of with you on that as well. I'll throw that out there, but still a very strong pick as a flex play. And we're not,
you got him as a wide receiver 3 and we just took him as our wide receiver 4. So
yeah,
I mean,
no, we're not hating the pick. I'm with Chris here. Yep. I do think there is some things about T. Higgins, and that's why I said to Adam, he's got a lot to prove this year. He's got a lot he's got to prove this year, and that's one of the reasons why. All right, so let's move on here to the 6 rounds. We're snaking back around, so the back half, first half of the 6th round. Before we get to that, we do have a question coming in, and that's from James Thompson once again. So how are we feeling about drafting receivers from these teams with 3 wide receivers? So I think this is a very good question. Very rarely do they all go for 1,000 yards. There's a few teams out there, of course, looking at the Bears and the Texans especially. I'll say this real quick, and then somebody else can jump in. Most likely, one of the receivers of the Bears, one of the receivers of the Texans are not going to perform up to ADP. And this is where you're going to need to plant your flag on which one of those 3 you think that is going to be. Because on merit, as far as the offense, the talent goes of both those teams and their 3 receivers, you can't really rank them too much lower than what they already are. So you're going to have to plant your flag on who you think that odd man out is. For me, it's been Nico Collins for the Texans, and Keenan Allen for the Bears has been my odd man out. I think I just recently moved Rome Odunze above Keenan Allen in my rankings for redraft this season. So you just have to plant your flag. Everybody's going to have a different take on that. What do you guys think about 3 receivers being able to go off, especially in those 2 offenses? Because I know we've seen it once before, but that was with, I think, more established quarterback play, more established offensive systems. Both of these are kind of new with rookie quarterbacks. So I think it's a little bit more, I should say a little less of a chance of it actually being able to happen. But go ahead. Anybody want to jump in there?
I was going to say, I thought it was Jared Goff's 2nd or 3rd year when you're talking about the receivers. He had Robert Woods, Brandon Cooks, and Cooper Kupp, where he's able to kind of feed 3 receivers. You also saw, more recently, you've had different teams, being able to get close to those 3, be able to feed as close to those 3 receivers. So I don't think it's, unreasonable, but I'm with you, Dan. I think you got to plant your, flag on one of the guys. You're probably going to have one guy who winds up being like a receiver 4, receiver 5 flex option versus the other 2 are guys that you're going to have in your lineup probably week in, week out.
You could probably throw Green Bay and Seattle in this same question. It's the same exact thing. You've got deep wide receiver cores, and you, like you said, Dan, you have to make a decision. If you bet right on one of them, you could hit gold and be a jackpot. If you bet wrong, you might have set yourself back a little bit. But if you've drafted well elsewhere, you should be able to make it through.
And quickly, just to add, you bring up Seattle there, which is a great addition. And part of what's been the thing with Seattle has been the other option is that you just see a ton of volatility between the receivers and that they all have their weeks, but on a game-to-game basis, you don't feel like you trust those guys. They end up as more flex options as a result that are boom or bust. That's the other, world that happens when you have, that much talent in your receiver room.
Well, Chris, I was just going to say, I'm glad you brought up the Rams. So there's this perception that all 3 receivers went off. They didn't. Only 2 receivers got over 1,000 yards, and then there was one of them would be left hanging where 700 yards, and it wasn't until Goff's 3rd year that really started happening, where all 3 receivers could kind of eat to some degree.
How about the Cowboys?
I would point that out there. You're going to have to give me a minute on the Cowboys, but we do have to kind of move on here. The point is kind of taken. All right, so back to the 6th round. So Adam's going to pick between the two nominees. Chase and I are going to be talking about our nominees for this range. So in the 6th round, beginning of the 6th round, right now the ADP range in this particular round is looking like Kyle Pitts, DeAndre Swift, Tank Dell, Kyler Murray, Zamir White, Najee Harris. Those seems to be the names for the most part that we're looking at. Chase, you go ahead and talk about your nominee first.
All right. Well, either way, it looks like we're setting ourselves up to take a non-wide receiver here. My nominee here is going to be Zamir White. I know not everybody on this show is as high on Zamir White as I seem like I am comparatively, but if I can leave round 6, which is what we're in, with 2 running backs and 4 wide receivers, or maybe 3 wide receivers, and my quarterback, I feel pretty good about the build that I'm making right now. And at this level, right where we're at, White's the highest ranked running back that I still have on the board here. I have him ranked as running back 19. And listen, he was effective as the lead back late last year. He was relatively efficient. I'm not worried about any of the quote unquote talent behind him. I think we know what we're going to get with with Madison. I think we know what we're going to get with Amir Abdullah if he's still there. I'm not worried about Dylan Laube's skill set taking over as a lead back anytime soon. There, he might take some pass looks away, but I'm not worried about that talent behind him. They upgraded their O-line when they took Jackson Powers Johnson. That should really help White, who had really good yards after contact metrics last year. The problem was he was getting hit all the damn time, so all his yards had to come after contact pretty much, and he doesn't force many missed tackles. He's actually pretty low on the missed tackle, forced missed tackles ranks. So I think he's a solid volume RB2. We would be taking him as our RB2 right here. And I'm comfortable with that. We've got plenty of wide receiver talent on the board. And like I said, I think Zamir White's going to have the volume to be effective in line with several other running backs that we've all come to know and love.
Here's what I think is funny, Chase. We're both going to be nominating players that we're projecting. Right.
Exactly.
We're both going to be nominating players that haven't necessarily done it before. And the guy
for a full season. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And the guy I'm going to nominate myself is going to be Kyle Pitts. So when we get to this 6th round territory, we start to get to that end of the top tier tight ends. And in my book, I think there's 7 top tier tight ends. And we cap it off kind of with Kyle Pitts and George Kittle. And there's Kincaid, McBride, Andrews, Laporta, and of course, Travis Kelce, Mr. Swift himself. And when we're getting to the 6th round, I think we're getting to the back end here where it's kind of hit or miss. If it's Kyle Pitts or George Kittle is the last one still available, but one of them normally is. And so far in this ADP range has been Kyle Pitts, and that's kind of where I have my own tier rankings listed out. So that's why I'm going with him. Look, again, I will reiterate. He's had a 1,000-yard season, okay? His rookie year with terrible quarterback play and with Arthur Smith. We've seen him do it before. The other factor I put into here is that, look, did he disappoint 2 years in a row? Yes, he did. Last year, it wasn't just the quarterback play, though. It wasn't just Arthur Smith. Flat out, we got burned because we didn't know how hurt he was, okay? We really did not know the significance of the injury. We understand now how banged up he was. And I think that plays a huge factor. Now it's Zach Robinson calling plays. Now it's Kirk Cousins as a quarterback. Yeah. Kirk Cousins can't go. It's Michael Penix, who's not even playing in the last game as a rookie because we're like, we already know how good he is. He doesn't need to play in the last game in the finale, in the preseason. It's incredible. So no matter how we break this down, I think London and Kyle Pitts in particular are safe in what they're going to have in front of them. And I want in on the Kyle Pitts breakout year. We've been off so far. I want in when it actually happens. It's going to happen this year. So Kyle Pitts is my nominee. Go ahead, Adam.
Oh, I want to gamble. I really want to gamble. I think I have to go Kyle Pitts. I can't quit on the kid. I think I'm always going to be biased being a football person first, and the talent to me is so far in the Kyle Pitts corner. I believe in the talent. Look, Zamir White to me, It's an interesting conundrum because I think he is going to get a lot of volume. I think he's going to maintain that job. I'm not worried about the running backs behind him, which I know are some people's concerns. But that offense is going to stink. Yeah, I think he's going to get a ton of volume. Like when they get in the end zone, it's similar to Ramondre. And Ramondre we talked about a round ago. So I think this is fair value for Zamir White. So I don't mean to discourage that, but for me, man, the talent on Kyle Pitts is insane. These are both starting spots that we're filling still. And I have the added benefit of being able to, like you can in a draft, right, look a little bit deeper down the draft board. I see the next two nominees. I know we're finally going to fill that spot. So I'm less concerned.
I was thinking the same thing just now.
I looked down and was like, all right, we're not locked into two wide receivers in the next one. So I'm allowed to do the right thing.
Yep.
To me, the higher player on my board is Kyle Pitts. I'm going Kyle Pitts.
Love it. Love it. All right. So again, we're going to recap Justin Jefferson, Travis Etienne, Cooper Kupp, DeVonta Smith, T. Higgins, Kyle Pitts, baby. That's a very solid 6 rounds. I'm liking how this team is shaping up. Before we get to the 7th round, I want to address James Thompson's question here. A lot of Njoku production came with Flacco. Is he being overvalued? Quick word. Yes, absolutely. Yes. 100% positively. So right now, David Njoku, his ADP is tight end 10. I have him ranked outside my top 12. Now, when I say I have him ranked outside my top 12, I have him at tight end 13. He's just outside my top 12. But the point that he, had, I think it was 60% of his production for the entire season came in like the 5 games with Joe Flacco. Like it hasn't happened with Deshaun Watson on the field. Now, maybe the Browns go more pass heavy. That's been the MO. They're going to go more pass heavy. Maybe that helps. But we look at Watson's career. When has he ever featured a tight end? Ever? Even in his prime, he didn't throw to the tight end. He throws to the outside. He doesn't even throw it to the slot. He throws it to the perimeter wide receivers. That's who he targets. So I don't see this thing happening with David Njoku. Anybody else want to chime in on that one?
No, his three best games, or his 4 best games, all came with Flacco. I mean, he didn't have a single game. I mean, he had 1 game, week 8, with 17 fantasy points. Otherwise, he didn't crack 13 fantasy points until after Flacco came along. And I mean, the talent, it's not a talent issue. It's like you said, it's how does Deshaun Watson distribute the football when he's the guy in charge? And everything we've seen, he's the guy in charge. No, it's not. That's a no-brainer for me.
Yeah. All right. So to get back on here, we're in the 7th round, the back end of the 7th round. I'm going to be picking between the nominee this time. The ADP in this range has typically looked like Tony Pollard, Jaden Reed, Jake Ferguson, Zach Moss, Rashee Rice, which is a huge value now because now it's this ADP. This was from this week that I pulled from, but I wouldn't be surprised we're talking next week and Rashee Rice is like 2 rounds ahead. So we're not going to be talking about him in this one anyway. Chris is going to give me his nominee and Chase is going to give me his nominee. So Chris, let's start with you.
Yeah, so I'm going to try to lock down the running back position, at least look at an option for us to consider in Tony Pollard, a guy that's everybody's written off of fantasy for some reason. They were screaming and yelling for him to get his opportunity. He got it last year. Now they're all bitching and mounting because he didn't do what they wanted him to do without Ezekiel Elliott. The guy still went over 1,000 yards for the 2nd consecutive year, had 6 touchdowns last year in rushing and 9 touchdowns rushing the year before. He got paid decent, if not good money to go to Tennessee Titans. I know everybody loves Tajay Spears. Tajay Spears has no ACL, guys. They're not ever going to make him a bell cow back. He's always going to split carries. He's always going to be a rotational guy. He's never going to be the guy. Tony Pollard will definitely be involved a lot. You're going to see both those guys involved. But the good thing about it is they're not going to pigeonhole either one of these players. They're going to have opportunity to switch on series. So you're going to see guys have red zone opportunities, be able to be a feature in the passing attack, and also run the ball. All things Tony Pollard does well, and Tony Pollard is going to be 100% healthy for the first time this offseason, unlike going into last season. So Tony Pollard is a guy, like I said, still averaged over 4 yards per carry last year, 5.2 the year before. Was so disappointing to everybody, but still really good RB2 option.
Love it, Chris. Love it, Chris. All right, Chase. So who do you want us to pick in this territory?
Well, listen, I'm a bigger Tajay Spears guy than I am Tony Pollard guy. The problem is I think that, like for what the production could have been from Tony Pollard, they already have a younger guy that can give them the same kind of thing. So I'm not as high on Tony Pollard as some people. But the funny thing is that all the arguments that I would necessarily make against Tony Pollard, you could kind of make against the guy I'm nominating, and that's Zach Moss, in terms of the idea that there is somebody else there who's younger and could possibly take a large percentage of that role, if not take the role outright by the end of the year. I actually have Jaden Reed and Zach Moss ranked back to back as 6th round picks here. So I'm comfortable taking Zach Moss in this range here. And if I've gone as heavy at wide receiver as in the first 6 as I plan to, and as we have so far, we need to take our RB3 here. He's not the most efficient. Moss isn't, but listen, Joe Mixon has never been the most efficient guy either in this exact same offense. It's always been a volume-based offense in terms of the running back production that we see. Like I said, he's taken over for the poster boy for the volume running back. Even if Chase Brown sees a good percentage of the third down work, which is I think where he would first start to maybe eat into Zach Moss's work, I think that Moss gets enough volume to be an effective RB3. So I have Moss ranked my running back 22. And I have Pollard ranked at 31 right now, just because I have Tajay Spears ranked back to back with him pretty much right now, because I see the two of them cannibalizing each other too much to be either one of them effective.
That's a bold statement.
There it is.
You should have someone else picking this pick because you had no shot. You had 0 shot in this one.
Oh, I'm sure I don't, because it's you, and I know you hate Zach Moss's guts, and so yeah, no, I'm.
You want to know how
I'm going to put my case out there anyway.
You want to know how different? Good case, by the way. Sort of. But you want to know how different we are on Tony Pollard and Zach Moss? I have Zach Moss ranked at RB 46 and Tony Pollard at RB 24. That's how
okay. So we've got him flip flop. Well, not flip flopped. I've got him way flip. But where do you have Chase Brown then? That's what I want to know about this.
I have Chase Brown at 33. I think I might have just moved him up.
See, and I have Chase Brown at 31.
I have Chase Brown at 30.
We basically have these exact. We flip-flopped our views on these two running back positions is what we've done.
Absolutely. That's what it basically boiled down to. Look, I've talked about Zach Moss. I'm not a Zach Moss fan. He can take his 3 games that he had with the Colts and shove it as far as I'm concerned. I'm not going to get swooped in and because of that. But Tony Pollard, I'm with you, Chris. I mean, he just gets ridiculed ridiculously. I mean, yes. Did you draft him as the RB6 last year and need to perform as the RB22? Yes. Are you disappointed by that? Absolutely. You know what he also did, despite the fact that he was coming off a broken fibula? Play every game. I mean, when you're talking about Tony Pollard, durability was a factor. He gets paid $21 million over 3 years with 10.9 guaranteed. Tajay Spears was not this regime's pick. I think that's an important factor. And not to say he's not talented, not to say he's not going to get involved. He is. But Tony Pollard is going to lead the way. And he's going to show you people, because training camp, that's all they're talking about, is how explosive Tony Pollard looks again. It was a 5 yards per carry guy in the past. He went down to 4. Yes, you lose some efficiency with extra volume, but it's not going to be that severe. He gets up to 4.5 this year with the volume he's looking at. He's easily surpassing his ADP right now, which is a high-end RB3. Easily. So this is an easy pick for me. It's going to be Tony Pollard between the two.
Zach Moss averaged 4.3 yards per carry on his awesome, spurt last year.
Awesome spurt. It's awesome spurt.
That's actually more than Joe Mixon generally averages for his career. Joe Mixon's a dead-ass 4.0 running back for his career. It's all about volume. So if Moss gets the volume that I think he's due to get, I think he'll be just fine in that offense, because that's always what Joe Mixon did, was all about volume. But Tony, especially if Tajay Spears can't take the sizable portion of the load that I think he'll take, yeah, either way, we've come away with our RB2 here and we're in good shape.
Yeah, I agree.
The thinking is still along the same lines. We needed an RB2 here. Yeah,
it is. We're just showing the different perspectives here. So, recap: Justin Jefferson, Travis Etienne, Cooper Kupp, DeVonta Smith, T. Higgins, Kyle Pitts, and now Tony Pollard. And I like how this is going. We have a few questions coming in here. So this is for, do you guys like Kobe Parkinson as a backup this year? Hey, Adam, you want to field that as a dynasty question?
I have him dynasty.
Yeah, I think he is an interesting backup option. I genuinely do. I mean, Higbee is expected to miss the beginning of the year, is he not? So
yeah, and
he's
old.
I hate Tyler Higbee with a passion. I mean, I'm sure he's a good guy. His mother loves him, but I don't rank him. I literally don't rank him on principle. I'm not going to take the guy taking over for him in any way, shape, or form. We love you, Nino, but
well, Nino, in redraft leagues, he's going to be on the waiver wire. So that's why I gave it to Adam, because I'm assuming this is a dynasty question.
Yeah, I wouldn't roster him in redraft, but he is someone that if I was, I would keep an eye out on the waivers for, especially if my tight end situation is dire. Just to, maybe make sure I grab him if he has a pop-off game kind of in advance, so that you're not, taken from him. Because I think he is going to be one of the better waiver option tight ends this year, at least until Higbee is back on the field. But I'm not necessarily rostering him to start off the season, especially if I'm confident in my tight end group. And as far as Dynasty goes, yeah, I think he's a good option to kind of have in that rotation.
Nice. Another question coming in here from Kanua Built. I'm just going to go with that. At the 5th pick in a 12-team full point PPR, 1 quarterback, 3 receivers, 2 running backs on a flex. Do we go wide receiver or Breece Bijan for hero RB? That's an easy one for me. If Breece or Bijan are at the 5th pick, I'm going hero RB all day long, 100%. I'd be shocked if either one of those guys are there at that 5th pick. When I have gotten the 5th or the 6th pick in a 12-man PPR league, I have typically been going wide receiver because usually those running backs are off the board at that point. We're talking more about the elite wide receivers. Chandler asking here, have the 2nd pick in an 18-man league. Woo! Dude at 1 said he's going Lamb. Hill averaged 26 points until his ankle injury in week 14, 3 more than CMC. Do I go Hill or should I just take CMC? I'm conflicted. Chris, I'm going to kick this question to you. What would you do? Tyreek Hill or CMC at number 2?
Tyreek Hill was a guy that was, had aspirations for almost 2,000 yards last year, a guy who's been awesome the last 2 years and still scored, I think, 100 points less than Christian McCaffrey did in fantasy football last year. It's a no-brainer. You take Christian McCaffrey. I know there's all kinds of concerns. Is he injured? Is he getting older? They're going to cut back. The guy had almost 400 yards more rushing than any next guy rushing. The guy is also involved in the passing attack. He's a red zone machine. Christian McCaffrey is the guy that you have to go with there. I'm sorry.
We always talk about positional, like having that advantage positionally, like Travis Kelce was always such a giant upgrade over all of the rest of the tight ends. Christian McCaffrey outscored running back 2 last year by more than running back 2 outscored running back 19. So you're bunching up literally everybody else in the league behind him. And then there's CMC. Don't be scared off by the calf injury that he's been working through. Take CMC.
We're going to get 2 more questions before we get back to the 8th round. Nino came back again. Just one more question before you guys get back into the rounds. Which side would you rather have, Amon-Ra and Zamir or Jamar and David Montgomery? So that's Amon-Ra St. Brown and Zamir White, or Jamar Chase and David Montgomery redraft. Go ahead. Whoever wants to shout this out first. I mean, I know what
Jamar Montgomery.
Yeah, I'm the same boat. Adam, can we get a consensus?
Jamar Montgomery.
Yeah. Okay.
I love Sun God, but Jamar Montgomery's the pick.
All right. So we got a consensus on that one. Millie Mills, Pittman, or London in the 2nd round? London for me. One word answers. Go.
London.
Yep,
London. Okay, cool. And last one, Canoe Bill came back. Ingram, Pitts, or Kittle, full point PPR. Full point PPR makes me go Kyle Pitts, because I do think Brandon Ayuk is going to be with the San Francisco 49ers, so we're back to being target distribution being a kind of a problem with George Kittle a little bit. So I'm going to lean Pitts because I think the target's going to go his way with PPR. But go ahead, Chase.
Nope, Pitts.
Chris?
Full point PPR, yes, I'll go with Pitts.
Yeah. Adam?
In full point, I have them back-to-back with Pitts in the lead.
Yeah, I'm the same boat. I got Pitts at 6 and Kittle at 7. All right, let's get back to it. We're talking about the 8th round now, beginning half of the 8th round. So in this one, we got Chris who's going to pick between the nominees. Adam and I will be choosing the nominees. So Adam, talk about your nominee.
Yeah, this is another guy who I've historically talked a lot about. I don't think this offseason maybe as much, but definitely if you've been watching the many iterations of this show over the last little bit, you have heard me glowingly talk about Deontay Johnson, who has just he's a target earner. At the end of the day, he does dumb things sometimes. I'm going to be completely honest with you. He does not always run forward with the ball. He sometimes struggles to find the end zone. He makes silly mistakes, but a receiver who is open the amount that he is open will be fed the ball, and that's just the reality of the situation, especially for a guy like Bryce Young, who, this show, I think, on average, even with Chase, who I don't think necessarily hates him, but on average, the show dislikes Bryce Young more than consensus. It's even going into him being drafted. Look, Bryce Young is a guy who's going to need the guy who is clearly open. I don't think he's going to throw with anticipation to guy who will be open. It's going to be the guy who is visibly open, right? That's going to be Deontay Johnson on this team. He's going to be the only separator, to be honest with you. Won't be the corpse of Thielen, and it won't be the 18 million Debo clones that they're trying to make over in Carolina. So Deontay Johnson is going to continue to be that guy that gets, 115, 130, maybe more targets. The value of said targets could be, similar to Pittsburgh, where the end zone's a bit of a struggle. But look, he's a guy who his floor is going to be awesome. And half point, he's going to get some of those, catch points. And just again, he's a really good player. If Carolina somehow became a good team, which is in the range of outcomes, I don't think it's likely, but it's in the range of outcomes, it would be in large part due to a monster season because of Deontay Johnson.
I love this because, Adam, first of all, we're both going to nominate wide receivers. It's both of us are nominating guys that we're very passionate about. So I think this is going to make it very tough on Chris to be able to choose between the two nominees, frankly. My nominee in this range, and I think I forgot to do the ADP range again. So Deontay Johnson is in this ADP range. Brock Purdy, Nick Chubb, Javonte Williams, Austin Eckler, Jonathan Brooks, Brian Robinson, Christian Watson being one of those guys. And that is who my nominee is, Christian Watson here in the 8th round. I love Christian Watson, okay? Not because I love him so much, the player. I love the value that is his ADP right now, because everyone's trying to figure out, and even ask, Matt LaFleur, who's the number one receiver in Green Bay? And he scoffs at the media. The real reason he scoffs at the media because there isn't one right now. But when you look at this team and how they're constituted and where the target distribution comes from, when everyone's healthy and on the field, the guy who has the best shot to be that number one receiver in that coveted offense right now is Christian Watson. And I'm going to put this out there too. Looking at the structure of our draft so far, I think we could go with a little more upside. I don't think we need necessarily floor. So that's the other reason why I kind of like Christian Watson for us here in the 8th round, given we already have 4 really good floor wide receivers. Does his potential land on his health? Yes, 100%. But again, they've addressed it. It makes me a little bit more confident that he'll be able to stay healthy, or at least give us a chance this year. It's career 10% touchdown rate. I mean, and it's just been sustainable through patches of games, through years, of course, but it's been sustainable when he's played. It's been 10% touchdown rate. It's been absolutely insane. Whether it's Aaron Rodgers or Jordan Love, they're looking for this guy in the end zone. His ADP right now is wide receiver 44. I mean, very little has to go right for him to outperform his ADP at wide receiver 44. And we've seen that when he's on his game, he's a top 20 wide receiver, easily. So I want to go with the upside here. I'm going to nominate Christian Watson. Chris, you decide between Deontay Johnson and Christian Watson for us to take here in the 8th round.
Yeah, this is a tough one. I think, both making compelling arguments as you talked about. I like Deontay Johnson, the guy that I think we saw Adam Thielen have 105 catches last year. So why can't that be Deontay Johnson, the guy who's going to be that receiver one? They're looking for a contract. You're talking about contract years, the guy who's looking to get paid that big money in Carolina's opportunity to do so. And then look at Green Bay situation. We had an offense that was very, effective, especially the second half of the season. Watson was the kind of guy who was in and out of the lineup. Is he going to be the alpha guy moving forward? It's still to be determined. But I'm with you, Dan. I think this is our lineup we have right now. I'm going to go with the upside. I love Deontay Johnson. I think he's got a really good solid floor. My concerns are a couple of things. Number one, the guy's only had 1 year over 1,000 yards in the last 6 years. So it's in a guy who has huge ceiling. And then you look at some guy who's not necessarily a red zone target. Bryce Young isn't necessarily throwing a lot of touchdown passes as it was. So, okay, then we're limiting a touchdown opportunity upside. And then add the fact that he's always nicked up, and he's already nicked up again with the foot and ankle. And that worries me. I mean, I know it's a little something in preseason right now, but the guy has a history of foot and ankle injuries issues that keeps him kind of in and out of lineup. So Watson, who has been historically injured, has spent this whole offseason trying to focus his energy and attention staying healthy. If he can kind of put that together, that's the only concern we really have with Christian Watson. Is not really the talent, isn't really the surrounding cast, and then isn't the guys you could ever necessarily feature to try to take away. Well, Carolina, you could definitely try to double team Deontay Johnson, see who else can beat you. So I am concerned about the upside Deontay, and I'm going to go with Watson.
All right. So to recap again, Justin Jefferson, Travis Etienne, Cooper Kupp, DeVonta Smith, T. Higgins, Kyle Pitts, Tony Pollard, Christian Watson. Yeah, this is a championship building team. This is what we
Christian Watson or Deontay Johnson as our wide receiver 5. Yeah, well,
I know that's the greatest thing about it too. And this is we're working off of 12-man leagues here, guys. Like this is a normal thing that we're working off of here. It's absolutely great. We had a couple questions I'm going to address before we get to our last round. Millie Mills Johnson over Thielen after how Adam ate last year. Yeah, did you also see how Adam ate the dirt in the second half of the season? Yes, the Thielen's cooked. It is Deontay Johnson time. Canoa built. Rank C. Will
Caleb Williams.
Thank you. I don't know why I was wrong, but I was thinking, I wanted to fit Christian Watson in my head. I'm like, Tua Tagovailoa, Jared Goff, Trevor Lawrence, 4-point touchdowns. We'll do this around the room. Right now, I have I have Trevor Lawrence, Caleb Williams, Goff, and then Tua is how I have those 4 ranked. Go ahead, Chris. What's your order of those 4?
I have Caleb, Tua, Trevor Lawrence, then Goff.
Okay. Chase, what do you got?
13 through 16, these exact 4 guys. Trevor Lawrence, Tua, Caleb, Goff.
Okay. Adam, what do you got?
I go Caleb, Goff, Tua, alone.
Okay.
Hope that helped, Kanoa.
We all have a variation different order on the front 4, so pick whoever you like the best. Of course, the Colts fans never going to say Trevor Lawrence is going to be at the top of that list. I'm just going to point that out.
Homer.
Oh, we all have fun. All right, 9th round, last round we're going to talk about for this show. So we're in the back end of the 9th round here. Chase is going to pick between the nominees. Both the nominees are going to be coming from Adam and from Chris. So when we're talking about the ADP range, we get into the back end of the 9th round, we're talking about guys like Jayden Daniels, like Jared Goff, Ladd McConkey, or like Caleb Williams, Ezekiel Elliott, Dallas Goedert, even coming in kind of into this range here. So Adam, yours is a mystery. You didn't even put this on the outline. So I want to know who's your nominee there.
Yeah, I did miss this one on the outline, and I hate to do this, and I'm actually going to give you a devil's advocate argument as a result, but Jayden Daniels is actually the highest guy on my board here. Just to be transparent. However, Caleb Williams is the next guy. He is my next quarterback, and of this group, he would be my next guy, regardless of position. And look, I think it's a really compelling argument because it's do you take the passer with some mobility who has a talent? I'm certainly much higher on Caleb. I presume the rest of you are as well, just where he got drafted, where our grades are. As a talent, Caleb's the guy. But fantasy cheat code is rushing quarterbacks. Jayden Daniels is going to get a crap ton of points. So I think it's a very interesting debate between the two. I land on the Jayden side, and I don't mean to tip off where we're going afterwards, but Jayden's the guy between the two for me.
So this got real simple, real fast. Chris, talk about Jayden Daniels, your nominee.
Well, look, I'm Adam. I've been going back and forth all summer with this. I had Caleb higher than Jayden, and now I'm back with Jayden. The rushing potential is something that's very tantalizing. But I've talked about this, ad nauseum, and we watched it in the preseason. Caleb Williams going to run, guys, and Caleb Williams rushed for 10 touchdowns back-to-back seasons. This isn't something he's just going to run around and just throw the ball all the time. So he is a guy who can definitely bring both things. Jayden Daniels has some injury concerns. We talked a lot about this in the draft shows that we talked about. I don't like the fact that he kind of takes some licks and hits. But what I'm going to go for, Adam, I'm going to go for the upside in the sense that I'll probably save myself and make sure I have a backup quarterback option. But Jayden has the highest ceiling. We've seen people like Justin Fields not necessarily to be great passers, but just that having that floor of rushing ability gives you that. And Kingsbury's system as well, I think they married a lot of things well for him. His offense is going to have a lot of pace. Chicago has to kind of predetermine what they're going to kind of do. Shane Waldron's still kind of getting his feet wet. What's their pace going to be like? Are they going to feature those receivers? Meanwhile, Washington's got a really good identity what they're going to be doing. They're building around Anthony Lynn. They're building around Kingsbury's running attack, and they're going to be able to feature that quarterback as part of that option. So I'm going to go with Jayden as the high upside guy.
Oh, thank you, gentlemen. I love it because I talked in the lead up to the I talked in the lead up to the draft about Jayden Daniels and how Jayden Daniels would be an elite athlete no matter what position he played, but at quarterback especially, the dude can flat out fly. Plus, he can throw the ball a mile. He's got good weapons. He doesn't quite have Caleb weapons, But I will take the weapons that they have given Jayden Daniels to start with, especially with Cliff Kingsbury. We like to talk on this show about coaching staff, about scheme, about fit. And I love the fit between Jayden Daniels and Cliff Kingsbury. And I'm excited to see where that thing goes. I have Jayden Daniels ranked as my last starting quarterback in a 12-team league. I have him at quarterback 12. We just went over some of our quarterback rankings there. I love the fact that we have Jayden Daniels available here. It's a reasonable spot to take him, and we have put quarterback off long enough. When we put quarterback off long enough, we need to shoot for that upside. Rushing quarterback has upside. Jayden Daniels is a great pick here if we could get him in the ninth round to round out this starting roster that we've put together here. I love it. Thank you, gentlemen.
Danny, you want a bold statement? I have Jayden higher than Anthony Richardson.
Oh! Adam, are you all right?
I'm a Colts fan.
Are you okay?
Yeah,
Breathe.
I mean, I disagree, but I definitely agree.
So do I, but I'm not a giant Richardson.
Well, Chris, to that point, again, when we're talking about our rankings, we're talking about guys that we like, that we've graded out, who we're projecting and everything like that. You would not take Jayden ahead of where Anthony Richardson is being drafted. Let's make that real clear. So just because you have Jayden Daniels ranked ahead of Anthony Richardson, you're not taking Jayden Daniels in the 5th round. That's kind of my point here, to make sure we're clear for everybody. Right?
Absolutely. I'm not taking either of those quarterbacks in the 5th round.
No, then that's why you don't just go strictly based on your ranking sheet and just go right down the line. Yeah, no, you have to.
What do you think we're having the show for? It's why you go by tiers.
No. Yeah.
And that's just to add to that, that's where Chase, you talked about kind of going with the flow of the draft in regards to one of the questions. That's why doing this is kind of difficult in the way that we're picking these names far in advance, to where when we got to the Deontay Johnson to Christian Watson point, I'd go Christian Watson. I have Deontay Johnson higher.
If that becomes the case, yeah.
If that's the context that we've built our team with,
right,
that can change, because we do want to go upside when we're talking about a bench wide receiver. Absolutely.
No, I have Johnson ranked far ahead of Watson, but in that context, I agree with you. I would have jumped on Watson.
I also have Deontay Johnson
ranked ahead of Watson. Super locked in, like I got to leave the draft with this guy. Doing the 1st round, sure, whatever, fine. Later in the draft, like, you have to be open to multiple options and be fluid and have tiers. And that's, why we wanted to do this segment. So
roster construction. That's the whole point of this thing, right? I also have Deontay Johnson ranked ahead of Christian Watson, but in that instance, I'd rather take Christian Watson. And not to get left out in the Jayden Daniels train, because Chase, you mentioned we have him 12.
We love him.
Chris, you have him at Anthony Richardson. I'm not as high as Chris is, but I do have him at QB9. I do have him in the top 10. I have him ahead of Dak and Brock and Love.
Yep.
Like, so I'm with you guys on that one. Like, you're talking about a quarterback in the 9th round, which is where he's going consistently, by the way. Like, 9th round's a real thing of where you're going to be able to get a guy like Jayden Daniels if you wait at the quarterback position, which, by the way, you should, especially this season. But when you get a guy like that who top 5 potential, Kyler Murray's a top 5 quarterback point per game basis rookie year with Cliff Kingsbury. This offense is set up very similar to that offense, man. It's right there. And if you're worried about Jayden Daniels getting smacked, so am I. The guy can't slide to save his life. But that's why you're getting him in the 9th round. There's no risk at this point. Take a Purdy, take a Lawrence, take a Jared Goff, take whoever in that double-digit round, and there you go. There's your safety net.
If you're going to wait on quarterback, which I agree with Dan, I'm fine with waiting on quarterback. Don't just wait on quarterback saying, frig it, I can get any of the guys in the bottom 3 of my top 12. Go in with a plan, though. We constructed a roster that makes sense to take Jayden Daniels in round 9. We can shoot for upside there because we built a pretty damn good floor with the rest of the guys that we've got. Don't just go into it saying, I'll just take whoever's available when I get to round 8 or 9. You might miss some value there. But if you want to wait on quarterback, at least go into it with a plan. Don't just do it blind off the top of your head.
We're going to end on this question because this is kind of funny to me. So Millie Mills is asking, why can't Bo Nix get mentions if rookie quarterback that late is an option for some?
Love you, Millie, but no.
Look, I get what you're saying. Now, for reference, man, I got Bo Nix ranked at 32. Like, he's literally the only starting quarterback I have ranked lower than Bryce Young. Nix is not a fantasy relevant quarterback. He has some mobility, but he's not going to look the run. Okay. Sean Payton has built this bubble of a check down offense. And that's all Bo Nix did in college anyway. I mean, we're talking about a guy who was 6.8 ADOT, ranked 167th. With superior talent in college around him in Oregon, and still check the ball down. His tight window passes, 4.1%, ranking 111th. So not only is he checking down, it had to be wide open for Bo Nix to actually make that throw. And he's not going to run around he's not going to run more than Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson only ran for 300 yards. There's only so much upside you're getting on mobility. This isn't going to be a high-scoring offense. It's just not.
I think the key differentiator is the best case scenario for Bo Nix, where you're like, all right, he had a really successful, really great rookie season. It may on the field look really good, like the Broncos are really good and the offense, moves
10, 11 wins. Yeah.
That could happen, but he probably threw 24 touchdowns, didn't, maybe ran 2 in.
13, 14 interceptions.
Right. So from a fantasy perspective, his pathway just isn't very good. He could be a fine NFL quarterback, be in the Alex Smith lane. I just don't think it's going to be fantasy productive, especially the way this offense is set up early.
Chris, what are you going to say real quick?
I was going to say, look, we saw Daniel Jones do this, and I'm not a Bo Nix fan. I'm not big on him in fantasy necessarily, but I will say, Dan, I have him higher than you do because I do think they're going to use his legs. There was a guy who definitely rushed for touchdowns in college again, did use his legs in RPO action quite often in Auburn and in Oregon. And then add the fact that similar skill set, physicality like Daniel Jones. You don't have to be a world beater. You don't run for 700 yards. You just got to run for enough yards and enough touchdowns to be fantasy relevant. I think Bo Nix could be a guy that you're going to have on your radar at some point. I hate the skill set, I hate the talent, but I think they're going to make him a guy that they're going to kind of make easy, efficient reads for and give him easy things to kind of accomplish in the red zone.
I mean, super flex last ditch QB2.
I don't have combine numbers in front of me, but I feel pretty confident in saying Bo Nix does not have Daniel Jones's legs. Does not have his
Daniel Jones is one of the better running quarterbacks in the NFL, to be honest with you.
So
and you can laugh at all that you want, but
I think he has some mobility, but I do not think he has the same kind of rushing upside as the Daniel.
Just saying, Bo Nix rushed 15 touchdowns the year before last, so it's not like this guy's just the stat.
So did Johnny Manziel ran for
Daniel Jones did not, though. You guys are going with all these names. Daniel Jones didn't do any of that.
He wasn't in an offense that asked him to.
Yeah, as I'm saying, everybody in the Oregon offense. That's what I said. I didn't say North Carolina or all college.
Auburn. He played for our team. He played for. Basically, he ran.
That's fine. I'm not going with that.
Hey, we got Kanoa checking in from Hawaii. Mahalo, buddy. That's awesome.
What's up? So let's try to end on this one bust, one must. If you guys can, I know it's kind of on the fly, but we can kind of think about this. So, Adam, what's a one bust player that comes off the top of your head at ADP and one must player?
Ooh, a bust player.
And a must player. One bust and one must.
A must. I might honestly go with our team and say, look, it feels very cop-outy to say a guy that's going in the first round. But relative to ADP, man, Justin Jefferson is one that I think I'm going to be leaving a lot of these redraft drafts with, just to be honest with you. Because I have him 3 or 4 slots higher than ADP, and that means a lot when we're talking about the first round. So he's a guy that to me is definitely in that must category. And then as far as bust, I think Nico Collins is a guy who is in that bust category. Just in the sense that if a guy we talked about planting your flag on a Texans wide receiver or on these other, teams with multiple wide receivers. I think if someone gets left out, it's him. I think, if you're looking for the safe guy, great route runner, that's going to be Diggs. And if you're looking to go over the top, I think that's going to be Tank Dell, who for his size does a really good job getting off the line of scrimmage and is obviously nobody questions his speed. So I think he's the guy that gets left out, and he could, show that he was a one-year wonder, got his contract, and is out.
Yeah, no, I could see that. Chase, how about you? One bust, one must.
My bust is going to be Brock Bowers, the tight end from Las Vegas there. I'm just not sold on that. They already have a decent tight end. I know they played 2 different positions, but I'm not excited about that pass offense as a whole. And you're talking about a guy that's probably the 3rd or 4th option in that pass offense. So my bust is going to be Brock Bowers. My must is going to be Brian Robinson, running back from Washington. Where they are taking him, that dude is going to eat and is going to have a good time. Draft yourself some Brian Robinson. You're not going to be disappointed.
Chris?
I think for me, I'm going to go with my must first. And I think there's two guys. Obviously, one of my love I'm keep harping on is Cooper Kupp. If you're going to get Cooper Kupp in the third round, I think it's a must grab. But if there's other guy that Chase just mentioned, a guy I'm really high on is Stephon Diggs, another guy that everybody's writes off because he's old or something and he's going to suck into Houston. The guy was really good for the Buffalo Bills last year, receiver 9. Was good the year before. And the second half, tail off the last couple of games. That's not something an age thing. That's something he's done for the last couple of years. So I look at an offense and he's going to be rejuvenated contract here. Stephon Diggs is a guy I'd love to have on my team. And then, kind of building off what Adams talked about, I'm obviously not as high on Nico Collins, a guy whose ADP is way too high for me. And just in general, Dan, the quarterback position outside the top 4, I have Lamar as my cutoff as my number 4 receiver. You should not be taking any of those quarterbacks any higher than round 6 or 7. I think, if it's not one of those 4, it should not be going that high.
Yeah, I like that too. All right, for me, I wouldn't be on brand if I didn't say my bust player, according to relative to ADP, was DeVonta. That wouldn't be my brand otherwise. So I have to put that out there. Look, again, I'm looking at a guy. I don't see him getting more than 12 touches per game. Raheem Mostert's still going to lead in overall touches. He's still going to lead in inside the 5 touches. Jaylen Wright is probably going to get mixed in at least to some degree, enough that it'll be annoying to the distribution between DeVonta and Raheem Mostert. And if something does happen to Mostert, I think the Jaylen Wright addition inhibits DeVonta from being able to take over the backfield entirely. So according to ADP, because right now he's going to RB9, I've been big on that. If you make him an RB2, I'd be all over it. So relative to ADP, DeVonta has been my bust there because when he doesn't hit the big play, he doesn't give you much in fantasy-wise. We saw that last season. And he's an injury risk. My must, I had a couple of musts, but to go with somebody that we haven't talked about on today's show, it's Terry McLaurin. Look, we finally have a quarterback who's willing and able to throw the deep ball. That has been missing Terry McLaurin's entire life. That was what he was great at in Ohio State, is why I fell in love with the guy, because he can just make plays happen. And he finally has a quarterback who is good at the deep ball. There's a lot of questions I have about Jaden Daniels and his ability to process and his ability to throw over that 8 to 12 yard pass consistently. But I have no questions when it comes to his ability to throw the deep ball with accuracy and with volume. So I love Terry McLaurin this year. I'm one of the highest rankers in ECR on him. I have him at wide receiver 24 right now. So big on Terry McLaurin. That's going to be one of my musts. All right, so we'll do it there. Guys, make sure you come back 9:30 next week here. Operation Dominate will be live again on the Fantasy Football Advice Network on YouTube. Make sure you tune in, get all your questions, and then love the engagement. That's why we went long today, so I really appreciate it from you guys out there watching the show. If you want to check us out while you're on the go, you can always download Operation Domination on your favorite podcast app. Follow us on social media, Dan Mader, Chase, Adam, all catch us all over there. And make sure you sign up for the Fantasy Sports Pro membership, $50 for the year or $5 a month to get fantasy 24/7 fantasy sports advice all year long. And you can join one of our jersey leagues. We're giving away a jersey to the winner, Brandon Ayuk, for me in particular. 3 more spots we're going to draft. We'll see you guys next week. Hey there, I want to thank you for watching Operation Domination today. And if you're enjoying the show, there are some ways you can help support us. You can go to podchaser.com/Operation Domination and leave us a 5-star review. And you can do this on any podcast platform or on our YouTube page when you go to @FF Advice Network. This completely helps out the show be able to grow, and also leave us comments to let us know how we can curtail the show to you, because you are the most important member of the show. So again, go to podchaser.com/Operation Domination to leave a 5-star review and leave a comment wherever you listen or watch the show, and we'll help better serve you.